when Nintendo released a cryptic 16-second teaser featuring a creepy man in a trench coat with a smiling paper bag over his head, the internet went into overdrive as it does, speculating what this unexpectedly bizarre project could be, with the consensus being that this would be Nintendo's first foray into full-scale horror. A week later, a collective groan was heard around the world, as it was revealed to be a revival of the niche Famicom Detective Club series, after which public attention almost vanished. However, for this guy, this was the best possible timeline, and I was probably the only person thrilled to see a new installment in this series. In the height of the pando in 2021, I spent actual money buying the remakes of the two Famicom Detective Club games, as you can see here, and here. At that time I was merely curious, as I was buying anything just to stave off the boredom while stuck at home. And I'd always been curious about the series after seeing Ayumi's trophy in Smash Bros. Melee when I was 11 years old. I ended up really enjoying the missing heir and the girl who stands behind, and held out hope that development studio majors would reuse their developed assets and team dynamic to create a new installment. And somebody out there must have heard me, as my wish was granted, with series creator Yoshio Sakamoto back on board to give us Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. So, how is it? Is it worth picking up what is absolutely one of the most niche and bizarre games Nintendo have launched in the Switch's lifespan? Well, it's actually pretty complicated, so let's get stuck in. First and foremost, this is a visual novel in the strictest sense, in the style of mystery novels themselves. Much like the works of famous novelists like Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle, and its Japanese inspiration Seishi Yokomizo, it's a slowly unfolding, deliberately paced murder mystery. Ace Attorney or Danganronpa, this is definitely not. The plot unravels at a very leisurely pace, mostly taking the form of long conversations with supporting characters as the mystery is slowly uncovered. While pacing could be a point of contention for fans of other visual novels, it's really what sets Famicom Detective Club apart from its genre mates. While it may not be for everyone, I really enjoyed the deliberate pacing, as it really allowed me to soak up the meticulously detailed and well-written script, as well as the key details like voice acting, art style, and music that serve the overall story. And oh man, what a story it is. It's not full-scale horror like many were expecting, but it is an engaging, suspenseful, and ultimately thrilling plot that does get pretty dark and gut-wrenching near the end. It goes off the deep end in its horrific murders that tie into a decades-old urban legend. It does end up being much darker and more mature than the previous FDC games, with a gruesome but satisfying conclusion. Hats off to the writers of this game, as this is Emio the Smiling Man's strongest point. And as a further aside about the story, I am amazed this got made. I don't know how much Switch owners would appreciate the late 80s rural Japan setting, as it's pretty hard for younger and non-Japanese people to relate to. I laughed at the series' introduction of a simple cell phone, which is treated with reverence and fascination by the characters. I'd always thought if this series got revived, we'd see it jump to the present day, but good for Sakamoto and his team preserving this period in Japanese history. A surprising decision for sure, as it has the potential to alienate younger players, but good for them sticking to their guns. Where Emio falters is in its gameplay. Basically, all you do is click around a menu in the top left corner and occasionally point and click to examine your surroundings. It's only a few steps removed from merely pressing A to advance the story. It's exactly the same as the previous two games, although it has been streamlined a bit. In those other two games, sometimes it wasn't really clear what option you were supposed to press, so you just brute force all the options till eventually you got it right. There's none of that this time, except for one funny scene early on that deliberately encourages it, perhaps as an in-joke among the development team and returning players. It's not the most interactive form of gameplay there is, with no mini-games or anything of the sort to break up the tedium. I'd argue this overly simple gameplay style is to the game's detriment. As this is a revival after 30 years, there was an opportunity to reinvigorate and evolve the gameplay. However, the team decided to preserve tradition and refused the chance to innovate. While I think going either route would have been okay, I can't help but feel a little disappointed that we can't see any new gameplay concepts here. However, the traditional gameplay serves the story they wanted to tell, a story I really enjoyed, so in the end, it's okay by me. This gameplay style really puts you in the point of view of its young detective protagonist. There's a scene later on where you're forced to pry too much into an older couple's lives, and they get really mad at you. You really feel like an asshole as the player, and I love the way it uses the gameplay against you to underscore an emotional scene. And speaking of emotion, nothing this year has really stimulated my emotions like Emio's combination of art style, voice acting, and music. This anime-inspired art style is incredible, with every background a painting and every character animation portrayed in colourful beauty unlike any other I've seen in a video game recently. As someone who loves to visit the Japanese countryside and interact with local people, it's awesome to see both brought to life in such stunning beauty in a 2024 video game. Likewise with the music, I dig the 80s bassy synth vibe that alternates deftly between cheerful and upbeat to dark and sinister. Just listen to how much this slaps. The voice acting is only in Japanese, but it serves the authenticity presented in this game, and is great, if like me, you're trying to improve your Japanese. The voice actors really bring their characters to life, so it really is a complete package in terms of both visuals and audio. And technically, it's all really well tied together. I really like how all of the interface elements were considered in terms of storytelling. Every transition, musical cue, revealing of text speed, and so on works in telling this excellent story. So, to sum this all up, Emio the Smiling Man is one of the most unique games of the Switch generation, in terms of both how it differentiates itself from other visual novels and other Nintendo releases. There is absolutely no reason for this game to exist, and I'm honestly amazed that it was greenlit. A slow-paced, grim, 80s set visual novel has absolutely no place in the modern world of gaming, and I just love Emio the Smiling Man all the more for that. This is clearly a passion project from Majors and Mr. Sakamoto, and I loved that Sakamoto used his seniority at Nintendo to get this into production. There is definitely no way that this game will be a financial success. It's too out of nowhere, too weird, and just too unmarketable. Most people I speak to in Japan have never even heard of Famicom Detective Club, let alone this new installment. However, it has all the makings of a cult classic, so I'm sure once word of mouth, used copies and end-of-year sales get around, debates about whether or not this game should have been released at full price, as well as its disappointing marketing campaign have been put to bed, and eventually become an important part of Nintendo's long history. I'm really happy to support a game like this despite its shortcomings in gameplay. Creative endeavors like this really ought to be supported in the gaming landscape, especially in this climate of layoffs and oversaturation of microtransaction-based free-to-play competitive shooters. My final verdict is that you really ought to give Emio the Smiling Man a chance. You just might enjoy it. You don't need to have played the other two FDC games, but if you are curious, I would recommend starting with them first. And hey, I'd love to see another installment of Famicom Detective Club someday. Perhaps one that jumps both its setting and its gameplay forward into the present day. And who knows, maybe we'll get even more revivals of long-dormant Nintendo IP. Looking at you, Mac Rider and Mysterious Murasame Castle. Anyway, that's it from me. Let me know in the comments down below if you've played Emio the Smiling Man and what you thought of it, or why you're still not interested in getting it. So, have a good one. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and I will see you next time.